right, roll call starting down here.
Brandy Pelletier.
Eunice Landry.
I'm Linda Sheff.
Shaylee Davis.
Carol Locke.
Jason Henry.
Tim Broderick.
Heidi Duford. Lila Adkins. Lauren Ferruccio.
Eliza Drolet.
Ann Pierce.
And for work sessions are done, I'm going to turn this over quickly to the superintendent first.
So we are juggling a lot of vacations, as I'm sure nobody's surprised to hear over the last few weeks and the next couple of weeks. So tonight, minutes of the meeting will be created from the recording. Notice I am leaning into the microphone as I say this. I ask that you all do the same. Otherwise, it can be very difficult to create minutes. That's number one, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Number two, although you will hear from them more extensively later, for most of you, all of you, this may be your first in-person opportunity to meet. You can shake hands and chit-chat after the meeting. Interim Principal Shaylee Davis and Director of Guidance Linda Sheff, who has a report for you this evening. That's all.
Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Next up on the agenda is public input, and I will read public input. This is a public meeting under New Hampshire RSA 91A, consistent with the requirements of the state constitution, Part 1 and Article 8. Public business is to be conducted transparently with all access afforded to the public. This is a business meeting being held in public. However, it is not a meeting with the public. Public comments are welcome to the extent that they may help inform the board regarding decisions about items on the agenda. Personal attacks and/or complaints about individual employees are not appropriate in this forum. Board policy requires that we refer complaints about employees to the superintendent, who will make himself available to the public at his office during business hours. If the complaint involves the superintendent, then it will be made to the board chair in person or via email. Per state law, up to 30 minutes are available for public comment during each meeting. However, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per individual during each public comment on item on the agenda. The board chair may remind you when your time has expired. With that being said, I will open our first public input. Come to the mic and state your name. And
Rob Ellis, I'm a Barnstead resident. We're currently actually running the summer program for Barnstead and Alton students. Plus it's an open day camp. I had to do a report for our board. Seemed like it was timely to kind of present that to you guys here, so I have a copy of that report. Is there a certain way to?
Just say take one and.
We do it like the kids do it.
So this is our second year where we've been running the day camp program. It's a little different than last year. It's funded through the ESSER program, as I understand. This year we open it up a little differently, and we allow we have actually children from 14 different communities attending. We run a 4-day-a-week program from basically 8:30 to 3:30 with pickup times after that. What we've done this year is we've given the kids 4 different things a day to choose from. And in fact, our older kids group, they have 2 activities. They actually have 8 things that they can choose from each day as they separate out. We have the typical, camp stuff, right? Arts and crafts, and we do that. We've also done welding. We're doing a watershed program, which is kind of came from New Hampshire Fish and Game. We have 2 ponds and several streams on the property, so the kids are going down doing a biological assessment. They're catching critters in the streams. We have 2 tanks that they put them in, and they kind of swim around in there. So we've done the welding, we've done tractor repair, like these things that you're like, oh, nobody's gonna like it. And surprisingly, we have a ton of girls that I got to understand the girls are gonna want no part of this, and they're having the best time getting dirty, getting greasy, doing that. We scale it down. 6-year-olds today, we're literally digging in hardpack, and that's what they did. We took the opportunity when the roads washed out here in Alton and Barnstead to rebuild roads that we have and taught the kids how we did it. 11 to 14-year-olds, no, not so much, it was hard work. 6-year-olds, greatest thing that they've ever done in their entire life, and we really made it difficult for them to do it. So that's what they got to do. You'll see in there they've learned how to do takeoffs of cubic yardage of materials, things like that. One of the things we're really proud of, we have 17 employees this year. 15 of them are local. 3 of them are older, they're adults. Other than that, they're Prospect Mountain High School students or recent graduates that are working. We use Massachusetts minimum wage because we're owned by basically a Massachusetts Scout Council, so that's twice New Hampshire's minimum wage that we're paying the kids that are that are working for us. So, and we're going to run 6 weeks. So we are halfway through week 5. We're actually pretty excited to be on the downhill side of, and we love the kids. And it's really been good. We've learned a lot of opportunities with some of the kids, some of your kids, and maybe kids that we saw struggling in a classroom, and then we can get them there, and we can be more fluid and flexible in how they're doing it, and they're really thriving and having a great time, and we're having a good time with all the kids. Most importantly, probably for everybody here at the table, we have 40 of them that now can use an AED, do CPR, and do first aid, and we're going to certify 20 more next Monday. We've been doing that with Barnstead Fire. So those kids are out in the community now with that skill set. And some of them are as young as 10, and you're like, well, maybe they got a piece of it, right? And others as old as 14. So we've been able to do that. So we're pretty proud of what the program's been. We've gotten pretty positive feedback from everybody, other than the lunch. We don't offer enough lunch choices, but I'm blaming Sam Cowan because we have purchased our stuff through the school, which was really good. It's, we're buying it from the school as opposed to really sourcing outward, but it's the same thing they get during the school year, and they're like, really? You got to be kidding me. We want choices. So that's what we've been doing. We walk the kids a ton. Like literally, if you've been to the camp's 1,000 acres. They'll start at drop-off, and we will walk them to the dining hall. We get together. We will walk them to their activity. We make them come back to the dining hall. We'll go to the next activity. I did have a kid told me he did 7 miles one day. So they go home, they're tired, they're absolutely filthy. So people have to pick their kids up, bring a towel because they are dirty. Today was our first really bad weather day, and they were outside. They're literally standing in the rain having, and nobody's complaining about the rain. They're complaining about other things. The walking was a little tough, but we've seen the kids get more and more accustomed, the ones we have for the whole summer. So we're having fun with them. But I just felt it was a good opportunity to share with the boards, where we are and how this program has kind of progressed. This being our second year, it's definitely a lot different this year. And we were able to, I know last year the program was 4 weeks, 3 days, the way that funding, and I think we've kept our piece of where the funding from the ESSER grant's going to be this year almost identical, and we've gone 4 days, six weeks. So we're keeping them outside more, is really what it is. And we're letting them, the next 2 weeks, our older kids are actually, they're developing the program themselves, so it involves a lot of fishing, a lot of kayaking, welding, those sort of things. Today was wilderness survival and go build shelters, so it was a prime opportunity day. Search and rescue was also so they're learning to read maps and all that kind of stuff. Tomorrow, we have just ordered new windows for our building. They're going to learn how those windows get installed, and they're going to help us build it. So it's a little bit of labor for us, but it's teaching these different things for them. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much.
Do I have to take any questions? Or
Just a comment though.
Yes.
A lot of good posts on Facebook. It's exciting to see it.
We do like our social media, and we do have you've seen the mayor, our dog. So he's like a legit therapy dog whose entire job is to lay there and have kids like pet him all day long. He has clearly the best job in the entire camp, other than they all fight over who gets to walk him every day, and he preferred to ride in his buggy. Rather, he's 10, he doesn't want to walk, but that's what he does. So, exactly.
My oldest son is definitely one of those kids that struggles in school, but he thrives.
Oh, Camden's
Yes,
awesome.
he loves it there.
Yeah, he's really been good. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public input? Seeing none, I will close the first public input. And next up is agenda review.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Do you want to add the extra things that are added, or?
We can cover them all in my report. I think your agenda's fine.
Perfect. Any other comments or anything else to be added?
It's pretty full.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Next up, approval of meeting minutes of June 6, 2023.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of June 6, 2023.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on those minutes? Once, twice, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstains?
I abstain.
We have 2 abstentions.
Randy and Eliza.
Thank you, since we're doing it already. All right, so next up is reports. So I know in our packet, we have a thank you from Madeline Penfield for the scholarship. It's in our packet. That's awesome.
Very nice.
Next up is revenues and expense reports. It's in our packet. Heidi, you want to highlight anything, or may have questions or concerns?
I do. We're just beginning the new year, so I don't really have anything at this point. I'm still trying to end last year.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, because we last met at the beginning of June, but we hadn't seen a report.
The final report,
Yeah,
still working on it.
okay.
Just have it for next month?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else? All right. Buildings and grounds, we have it in our packet. Anybody have questions on buildings and grounds? We got a lot of stuff going on this year.
It probably makes sense as we go through reports to talk a little bit about items you'll see in personnel. Earlier in the new fiscal year, Sean Asdot, who you all know from his work at the 2 elementary schools, took over as our Director of Buildings and Grounds for the system. We also would like to and have appointed Dan Bemis as his assistant. Dan will now be able to float between the 2 elementary schools to support Sean's work. Previously, Dan worked exclusively at Alton Central. Glenn, who works here at the high school, will be the lead at the high school when Sean is not here, because with one director of facilities, it's impossible to have a supervisor in every place at all times. When we get to my report, you will see how the money washes out, and we are in good shape. But this is now a report from Sean, which could have caught you by surprise without that little introduction. In addition to his written report, I can tell you that the sound system that we waited 12 months to receive the components for is now installed and configured. I was in the gym this morning and heard a demonstration, and it is loud enough, for sure.
That's been a long time coming. So that's a
It
nice update.
has been a long time. On another note, speaking of items that have been a long time coming, Sean has begun working on the situation with the deteriorated sidewalks in front of the school. You might have noticed on your way in, they haven't been repaired yet, and that is because the best advice we seem to be getting at the moment is to consider replacing some of those. I think they're 6 foot by 6 foot or 5 foot by 5 foot squares. That is not what we encumbered money for, so that would require capital planning and more discussion with you. So right now, Sean's working on it. We do know that the condition of those sidewalks appears to have been caused by using the wrong kind of ice melt, and it's preventable. So we won't have the problem again, and it won't get any worse going forward. In the meantime, however, when we fix them, we want it to be a permanent fix.
Yeah.
We want it to look the way it should. And that might mean a multi-year project to do some replacements.
So when you say sidewalks, do you really mean the sidewalk, or do you mean the whole entrance to the school?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, thank you. So everything in front of this school, including the sidewalk that goes along the bus loop, but also including the area underneath the overhangs out there, it's all poured concrete, essentially sidewalk blocks. So it's all built like sidewalk. So that is what I'm referring to. I'm talking about the whole thing.
Because some of them, like at the main entrance, there's like a layer that just sort of disappears. It's not like the sidewalks. But
So in 2019, the sidewalk, the original work was coated with a rubber. I mean, that's what it seems like, coating. And a lot of that has come up and flaked off and is deteriorated, in addition to the problem we've been talking about for a year, which is the deterioration in the expansion joints. So I'm sorry to bring this kind of news, but it is what it is. We may be looking at a bigger project out there, and if we are, it's more than likely going to be a phased thing over a period of time. But Sean is on top of it. Everything I've told you comes from Sean. He's been doing the research.
So we won't be wasting the money of fixing the grooves.
We've held back.
Just temporary fix.
We've held back for now on repairing the current existing conditions simply because even though it's relatively less expensive to spend potentially $10,000 doing that and then come to you within a few months and say, hey, we think we should start ripping these up and replace them, you might not like that, and I think that would be understandable. So we're holding off at the moment. I think you'll see this item on your monthly agenda until we have a plan.
Do you know when he says that the spots in the field are being addressed, what field is he talking about? Is he talking about the soccer field back there?
Yeah.
Yep, so the practice fields in the back, I had not received any reports about bad conditions back there, but we heard some public input regarding field conditions.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, I wonder, 'cause
That's what it
they
is.
said there was holes for
Yeah.
the
There is.
thing.
We went
So
out
they're gonna
the next
fix them.
day.
That's good, all right, I just wanted to see if that, he meant baseball field or soccer field when he said
But
that.
I think in the packet, the athletic director, it's an extensive report. He's covered every field, so let's see if it shows up there.
It may, and I haven't looked at that myself yet.
Okay,
The softball
But-
field needs some work in the back, and then just some other fields, but the back practice field was the worst, where they did drainage and it was not filled in properly afterwards.
But I do think it's an important question, and it does include the drainage on the softball field. Those drainage areas, there were, I think, 4 pipes laid into the outfield of the softball field. Grass never really came in right on top of those, so that's part of the repair, along with the practice soccer fields. I think it's an important question, though, because as I told you that night, there was unspent money in the fiscal '23 budget, and did we manage to encumber it by June 30th? I think we did.
Just the landscaping,
Yep. So these repairs that are being done were able to be done using last year's budgeted funds.
good. That's good.
Anything else for buildings and grounds? Seeing none, we'll go over to the guidance director, Mr. Chef.
So Linda doesn't have to stay after this, is that okay? Okay.
Not that I don't want to.
Would you please use the microphone? Thank
Do
you.
I have to?
Yes, please.
So hi, everybody. I'm Linda Sheff. I want to thank everybody for hiring me as the new school counseling director at Prospect Mountain High School. I'm really excited to be here and look forward to the challenges that we have ahead of us. But I believe that my knowledge and experience will be an asset to the counseling department and help us all move successfully forward and learn and grow together. First and foremost, I know there's been many changes in the school counseling department at the high school, and I'm sure that very many people are worried about those changes. But I want to assure people that we will work very hard to help the students know that we are there for them and that we support them, and we want to help them in whatever way we can to be successful here while they're here at the high school. One of my first priorities will be, as the team comes together, since it is a new team, to look at the priorities of the department, find out who needs to handle what want to find out how the procedures take place at Prospect Mountain High School, because every school, they're different. And then we'll work as a team to analyze how things are going and try to find a way to work smarter and not harder with those responsibilities, and make sure that we're utilizing our productivity to the fullest extent while at the forefront meeting the needs of the students. A large need that I want to focus on this year is providing career pathways for students. I'm sure many of you are familiar with what the career pathways are, but there's a lot of reasons why we should focus on the career pathways. We play an important role in helping students lay the foundation for their future. Many students don't know what they want to do, so giving them opportunities to explore career pathways, and I'm trying not to go by my notes because but I'll read this. Career pathways provide a combination of educational classes as well exposure and experiences to various career fields, which helps integrate real-world learning experiences to support students in reaching their academic, career, and life goals. It's exposure to these different career fields and pathways which helps students make informed decisions about their future, and as such, help them be more successful. Career pathways allow students to experience and explore career fields while still having the safety net of the high school, which I think is really important. And career pathways are how career development education occurs for students in high school. So various pathways may include apprenticeships, extending learning opportunities, online classes, CTE programs, eStart and Running Start classes, independent studies, exchange programs, and the list goes on. An example of this might be a student who is interested in the medical field but really hasn't had any exposure to that. They may do a VLAX class on medical terminology, which is a class that's not offered here at Prospect Mountain. They might attend the CTE program in health science up at the Lakes Region Technology Center, or they might do an apprenticeship working for the Red Cross or working on one of the local health agencies. You know, I've had students that say they want to be a nurse, and this first time they're exposed to blood, they don't want anything to do with being a nurse. So having those experiences, I think, is really important for those students to try to help them decide what they want to do for their career. The research behind career pathways is there's numerous benefits for students. We all know that if we are enjoying what we're doing, and then we're going to be more successful at doing it, or we're going to find out, we're going to invest more in our time. So improved engagement, a college and career readiness, enhanced career awareness, better graduation rates, reduction of the skills gap, and improved employability. And, you know, I think that with the increasing demand for a high-skilled workforce, it's more important than ever for us to be able to provide career pathways for our students to be able to go out and see if these are the fields that they'd like to go into. So I'm really looking forward to working with the educators and counselors here at Prospect Mountain this year, and to help students develop clear plans so that when they leave the high school, they know which direction they're headed. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, I had a quick question. What's your plan to get to know the kids? In other words, in order to create career pathways, you have to really understand the kids, make connections, relationships.
Right.
So do you have a plan for that, since they're all new? The new guidance is meeting students. So.
Right. I think it's going to be the task of all of us to meet with our students individually, question them, get to know them, find out if they do have a plan. Some students know that they want to be a teacher, they want to be a doctor, they want to be a vet tech. Some students have no clue, and so I think opening the door and having those conversations face-to-face with students is going to be important. I think also that if we can push into some of the classes, like the freshman seminar classes, and work with students that way, you know, we'll be able to get larger number of students to try to determine what career pathways that they're headed in. I also think that, and I'm still new at this is day 7 for me here, that we might be able to pull into or push into the PAC, and be able to provide some services that way for students, as well as offering some career interest inventories. And I think there's going to be lots of different ways that we'll be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that question. Anybody else?
I have just a quick question as well, and thank you for being here. I think a lot of parents and students, myself included, we did lose a fabulous guidance counselor, and so I'm glad you brought up the careers pathway. I have a freshman going into her sophomore year, and she's already a part of that, but we have some questions, and we don't know who to contact. I know it's only day 7, but can you just let us know who should they contact in the summer, because we just need some questions before day 1 of school.
Sure. So I'm here every day on out. They can certainly reach out to me, as well as I'm hoping to have the other counselors in by next week at the latest, so that we're here and we're working on schedules and we're trying to alleviate students and parents' fears and to help prepare them and to let them know that we're here to welcome them and help them in whatever way we can.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, interpretive report from Ms. Davis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple more handouts for you as part of my report. So I'll pass these down and around. I have them structured so they're every other.
So I'm taking 3.
Yeah, the ones, they go sideways and straight up and down.
I think we get this.
A lot to report.
Huh?
A lot to report here. Okay, I think I'm getting it.
Oh, you can take the top one and then pass it sideways, I think.
Oh, I thought you wanted us to take one of each of these.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I've got 10 of them there, I think.
Here you go. I don't know.
Sorry
take the
about
top
that.
one.
Just the top one?
Just the top one. I think I have all the same here.
Oh, actually, it's just like this, top like this.
Oh,
You may have to fix that.
I really need to learn my.
Oh, I can pass them up.
It'll
Bring me back to my
So
American
you can tell I've been
Studies days.
retired too
Oh,
long.
that's fine. I should have stapled them. I'll take responsibility.
So we were supposed to take every other.
It's trial and error.
I'll figure it
Now
out.
I feel like a
After you hand it,
dunce.
I'm like, oh, wait, hold on.
I feel like a dunce now.
It's
All
only the
right, wait a
camera.
minute. Here, the top one is 2. If you run out, I have some more here.
I think it's the first page. Well, I need the first
All
page.
right.
All right.
I have a packet here if someone needs it.
Oh, great. I have one
I think this is.
I got it. All right, good.
right here. Oh, it looks
All
like she
right,
just
so there you go. They're a lot closer.
Okay, just that one page, I think. Or just. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
One page, the top one was in your packet, and I added a couple things
Sorry.
to the back of it, so
Shouldn't
sorry
have
about
given it to me
that.
first. Shouldn't have given it to me first.
You took the
that's-
brunt of that, so I'm okay.
I know. I'm out of the loop so much now.
So this has been a really wonderful summer, a very busy summer onboarding, but I'm delighted to have been able to spend so much time with the staff and faculty. Early on, I sent out an invitation for parents, staff, and faculty to come and meet with me. And as of today, I've met with 29 staff and faculty members. And one thing is clear, these people love their school, and they are dedicated teachers. And you know, they want to carry that tradition forward. And so that was really wonderful to experience. And I feel like I've gotten a really great feel for the community and have a solid base to begin the school year on. We've done a lot of hiring, and that's been kept us busy as well. But I feel I'm very excited about the people that we've brought into the school counseling department. I do believe that they're committed, they're approachable, they're friendly, they're going to take care of our students, their emotional needs, as well as their academic and future career needs. So I'm pretty happy about that. Some of the parents have come in. We had a meet and greet. So all of those have been really nice to stretch out into the community. I've met a few of the students. That's been great. I've taken one family who was interested in open enrollment. I toured the school with them, and they were really excited to see our facilities and hear about our program. Let's see. So on July 1st, as of when I began, we had several high school openings. We've hired all of our opening positions except for our science position, and we've been able to meet our students' requests, our needs. We dug in deeper. We made sure that our seniors were taken care of and had all of their requirements for graduation, as well as making some of the juniors who had requested an elective, making sure that they got into a science. So we were happy to see that they were all set, and we were able to move forward and meet those science needs.
Are you still going to advertise for a science teacher?
Yes.
Continue to try to find one?
Yes, it's still advertised, and I've been brainstorming ways in which we can start recruiting for next year. So I'm going to be reaching out to UNH and SNU. Those are within commutable distance for, and I'll talk to the superintendent about it as well, of bringing in student teachers, see if we can get some mentoring, see if we can get some interest for this school and get a running start on our hiring season. So we'll be all set in case we don't find someone this school year.
Sure.
Yeah, but sometimes people do move into the area, and I did have experience once. I was able to hire a science teacher mid-year because he finished his master's degree program mid-year. So by reaching out to schools, I was able to find someone.
Is science a critical shortage area?
It is a critical shortage area.
So you could hire someone without certification, they could get all cert,
Yes, we could.
so that's another option.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, someone even hoping to make a career change.
sure.
Yeah.
We'll come out of retirement.
Don't look at me, I was saying.
Just saying.
Principal, I don't think we need that here. We haven't.
So we've been working on initially when we came in, we had not quite finalized the faculty and staff schedule, or the faculty schedule, so we've done that. And now what we're doing is we're moving through and working on the rosters and trying to get the classes balanced for the students. Linda's been working really hard this week, going through student by student and making sure that they have a good schedule, that they don't have too many study halls. And we're all getting to know Infinite Campus, which is our new student information. Well, it was here before, it's new to us. And she's done a hero's effort in getting to know that. She's in there working in it, so that's really great. So we still have an administrative assistant position at the high school. We've interviewed for that, and we're just, looking at that position and who's applied. And we'll be hopefully moving forward soon with that. We have another person that I've recommended to hire, and we're waiting to finalize that and get them in here and get them start training. So we'll be set for the new school year. I want to say that when I walked in here in July and saw how terrific the building looked at the end of the school year, I was pretty impressed at the cleanliness. The custodians have done a really nice job keeping this school looking nice year round. And but since that time, they've been working really hard, and it's been really nice working with Glenn. He's really professional, and it's been nice getting to know him and his commitment to his crew and to this school.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think one other key thing that keeps this school clean is the kids respect it.
Yes.
And that's a big step right there.
Right. Yeah, and I think that sense of pride at this facility is absolutely beautiful. And to come here every day and the natural light in the classrooms, the views outside, it's really a wonderful place to teach and to learn. And Sean Asdot's done a wonderful job. We've walked the building. He's shown me places where he feels like maintenance needs to be done. He's really got his eye in this place, and we'll stay ahead of it. So I'm really happy to have worked with him. He's got really a great demeanor, kind personality, and I know he'll do a great job for us, and I'm going to enjoy working with him. John Larson, our new athletic director, he started strong. He's been working really hard and getting things into place. One of the things he's brought in is final forms. What I appreciate about that communication system, it's really a do-all system for our athletes, and I really appreciate that the coach can communicate with the people on his team through a platform that's safe. So we're not having any personal cell phones used. Everything needs to go through that final forms in terms of keeping in touch with the students that are on the roster of the sports teams. Coaches can use it to send out announcements. Parents can upload all their medical documents. If a student is injured, the return to play note can be right there and the coach can see it. So it really is going to facilitate and make everything run more efficiently and smoothly. And he's just so incredibly personable and enthusiastic. I do believe he's going to be a great addition to our community. So at the end of last school year, Amanda Russell, our assistant principal, surveyed the staff on the most pressing issues that they felt were happening within the community, and it really centered around discipline. The teachers were really concerned with the amount of cell phone use in the classrooms. They were concerned with students leaving the classroom, going down, getting food, coming back, taking prolonged breaks. And so one of the things that we're going to do, and also maybe the need for passes. And so that was put out there, And so at the beginning of the school year, I will be talking to the faculty about whether or not we want to embrace a passes program so that students are more accountable for when they are given permission to leave the classroom. I'll also be asking the staff to make a renewed focus on monitoring cell phone usage. But Amanda and I are also going to have a strong presence in the school and make sure that we're following through and supporting the teachers in that measure. Because I do believe that, the teacher's number one job is to prepare the lessons and to deliver the lessons and to lead the class and monitor the class in terms of their academic learning. And I don't want them to feel discouraged when students aren't cooperating or doing things in the classroom that are running counter purposes to their goals. So we're going to be really focusing on that with the teachers. Let's see. And then August is going to be busy. So we've already been finalizing plans to get going. We'll be sending out the staff letter next week, as well as the parent letters to let them know what the opening will look like for school. Some details. And we're looking forward to meeting our new freshmen. And I've passed out my copy, of course, but I did have some things to add. First of all, I wanted to talk to the school board about possibly, changing a couple of things in the way that students exit at the end of the school day. Right now, the students that park in this front parking lot can either leave through the back of the lot and circle around alongside the school, or they can exit through the front. But what happens is we have students coming into that main corridor to exit through 4 different points. So what I'd like to do is make it one way through the parking lot so they all exit out the back. So what I'd like to do is they all exit out the back, they come around, and an administrator will be there to monitor when they pull out and onto the main corridor, and then an administrator on the side of the road where they exit from the back lot. So the 2 administrators will work in concert to let the back lot out and then the front lot, and they'll take turns. And it will avoid that crush of traffic coming from 4 different directions at the end of the school day. Because sometimes you have those 4 different directions, but then you have a parent trying to pull in to pick up their student. So I think that will make it safer for students and lessen the possibility. That is a change in practice. So that's not to mean that this is not an idea that we'd like to try, and if it doesn't work better, or if it slows things down significantly, then we'll revisit it. So I did want to talk to the school board about that. I do have 2 other requests. One is that I'd like to set the graduation date for June 14th. Traditionally, we've waited. I understand that we've waited until later in the spring to set that date once we've experienced our snow days. Setting that date will allow families to make their plane tickets, grandpa and grandma flying in from the south. It'll allow families to plan a little better if they have a set graduation date. One of the things that we worry about is snow days. So I looked up the DOE's requirements. Right now, you have to have 990 hours minimum per the DOE for a school year. We have 7 blocks a day at 50 minutes, so we get 1,050. So already the seniors get 60 extra hours, which works out to be about 5 extra days. So then, in addition to that, the New Hampshire DOE regulations state that seniors can't end their school year 5 days earlier. So in other words, you can't go 5 days below the 990. So if we add the 5 days that we're already giving the students extra, and we add that to the 5 days, at this point it brings us to June 28th. So it could be Snowmageddon, and we still would be okay.
What day of the week
That
is
won't
that?
happen.
That won't happen. It's New Hampshire.
What day of the week is that?
It's a Friday.
It's a Friday.
So we basically, past July 1st, we can't be in school, so.
If we go by our schedule that we discussed before, we would have an Alton meeting on Monday the 17th and then the JMA on Tuesday the 18th and graduation would be on the 14th.
So we'd have to change those.
So,
Change the board meeting, easier than you can.
Yeah, we can change the board.
but I think setting graduation is a nice,
I think last year was actually on the calendar, wasn't it? And that's what we stayed with.
Right, it was on the calendar, then we had a lot of snow days, but we had people who had bought tickets based on the calendar, and we didn't want to rock that boat.
I'm pretty sure when we approved this coming calendar, we set graduation date, and I don't know what it says.
Oh,
We did, we had that discussion.
We did.
We set the date when we approved the calendar.
we did.
It's appearing as tentative.
Because of last year, it wasn't tentative, so we stuck with the 9th. So, is it tentatively the 14th?
Yeah, it appears right now as the 14th with parentheses tentative.
Well, based
Okay.
on the hours, I don't see why we can't say as of tonight, yes. You know,
I have no problem.
Is that a
setting
motion?
the date.
yep.
Yes.
I second it.
Maybe.
Brandy made the motion, seconded by Ann, for the 14th as a date for graduation, June 14th, 2024. Any comments, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? All right, 14th it is for graduation.
Thank you. Okay, so the final thing is a request to the school board. When I began, I learned that there had been a proposed fundraiser for the seniors to paint their parking spots. It's a tradition that other schools have done, and so I told Tim that this was afoot, and I started doing some research on it. So I was able to, we have a listserv in New Hampshire for New Hampshire principals, so I reached out on the listserv and said, hey, anybody do this? Pros and cons, how has this gone? And then I talked to 2 principals that were in the South, one in North Carolina and one in Florida, because I looked up schools that were doing it, and I heard back from a couple of them. So my proposal, and I do understand this is a change in practice, so as it's done right now, these spots are first come, first serve. So if you're a speedy sophomore and you're a morning person, you can get the first spot out in the front lot. This would change practice to make the front lot a senior lot for those who wanted to paint it. And so those would be their spots for the year. So that would be a change in how things are done. We also have not numbered them before, so it's just been, park wherever. The second thing that hasn't been done before is students paying to park. So I understand it's been the position of the board in the past not to charge for parking. So my proposal is to allow the senior class to engage in parking spot painting as a way to celebrate their senior year and to enhance school culture and community. And so through looking at how other schools have done it, this is an abbreviated proposal, but it's basically the nuts and bolts of it. So senior spots would be randomly assigned. So no one could get the best spot just because they paid more. It would all be equal, and it would be randomly assigned in the parking lot nearest the school, and anything unnumbered would still be first come, first served. A square or a smaller rectangle would be painted within each spot, but not the whole rectangle. We would assess a $30 fee. So the $15 would go to the senior class who would manage the project and coordinate it with the administration, and the senior class would pay for the paint that would recover the spot in the spring. So you get it for 1 year, you get to paint your design on it, and in the spring it gets repainted. We would choose a shade of gray that was neutral. Gray's a nice backdrop color anyway, and it would kind of blend with the parking lot. Anything that wasn't for paint could be for the senior class for their class trip and other activities that they want to do. And the other 15 goes to ensure that the repainting of the square happens in the spring. So it could either be that a club volunteers, like even the senior class, hey, we'll paint it for you. You've already paid the 30, we'll keep the 15 and we'll paint it. Or if a student painted it over themselves with the paint provided to them, they could get their $15 deposit back. The parking spot painting would be supervised by adults, which could include parents, and definitely the senior advisors. Students must use acrylic paint and pay for that acrylic paint themselves. The parking spot painting is to enhance school culture and community. All images and words must follow boundaries of good taste and decency. Spots created in order to create a disruption will be covered over, the $30 fee forfeited, and the parking pass privilege revoked. One principal told me they've never had a problem because people know if I do something that's, not within the guidelines, I'm not gonna get to park there anymore. I'm gonna have my pass revoked, and it's gonna get painted over. So it's really, futile to go outside of the boundaries. I included some quotes from some of the different schools that use it. It is a great activity that the young people look forward to from their freshman year forward, of when they get to be a senior and they get to paint their spot.
So when you say they're gonna be chosen randomly, how do you do that? Are you gonna put their names in a hat, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if we have, 40 kids that want to do it, then we'll put 40 names in, we'll, figure where those spots are, and we'll shake it up and pull it out and say,
Okay.
this is yours. So trying to be as equitable as possible.
And what if a student says they can't afford it? What are you gonna do then?
So I do believe that we have those kind of funds where we could help a student, absolutely.
What do you
Yeah.
do if somebody else parks in their spot?
So we would consider that school discipline, at first time it'd be talking to them. Why are you parked there? What are you thinking? Your time's coming.
Right, I think last year
So-
they got a detention if they didn't have their parking pass or something, and.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Wasn't the front lot always upperclassmen though? Wasn't that always seniors and juniors?
Yes,
And juniors.
and juniors were included before, right?
One of the things too that you have to take into consideration is the winter, and sometimes you lose a row or two of parking, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure where it is that
Mhm.
you're picking these spots. And that just, as staff,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'll come in the middle of the day and literally have no parking available in that parking lot.
Okay,
Just something to keep in mind.
yeah.
If we move forward with the idea, I think that brings up a good point, and it'd be an opportunity to perhaps designate staff parking as well, because we don't want our staff having to not have a place to park if they have a class they need to, that's
Yeah.
a big issue, or could be a big issue if it hasn't been in the past.
Yeah, what I've seen before when I've had traveling staff members is we have put reserved.
Yeah.
And so that person knows that, that's their spot when they come and go.
I think it's the refund of money. That means you're gonna have to hold on to money for the remainder of the year to get back.
Student activities account.
Student activities, manages that.
The office manager.
Okay.
More bookkeeping, huh?
Not for her.
It sounds like a part-time job in and of itself to just man the projects. There's gonna be a lot of, checks and balances. So I like the idea. I think it's great. I've seen it on social media. It looks like a good opportunity. I do worry about the fee for parking. I don't know, did we have to pay for parking in the past?
No.
no.
So I worry about that change. And I don't think it's something that we should, that shouldn't be a reason maybe not to do it, but maybe there's another creative way to pay for like the paint, and it could be a senior fundraiser or.
Yeah, the seniors have been racking their brains on ways to raise money. So this idea began as a senior fundraiser. But I do agree with you, and I do understand the equity issue and making sure that anybody that wants to paint a spot will have that opportunity.
Could we maybe start with a $20 fee and see? Maybe
I
that's.
find it interesting that a student has a car to drive to school and they can't pay to paint a little square. I'm sorry.
Well, I think they
It
can,
depends on
but
the family, Eunice,
but
whether the
maybe-
family supports them paying the $30 or not.
maybe 20 is a little bit easier to swallow to start, I don't know.
For someone that just had a senior though, I mean, there's a lot of extra expenditures that come up when your kiddo is graduating, and I just don't want that to be a burden where it's a change, where we didn't pay for parking before, Now, if you want to park, you have to pay for a spot. I don't want that to be.
Well, they can still park.
Yes, just if you want a designated spot, you pay.
If you want to designate a spot, they'll paint your spot.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you just get free parking.
otherwise you park
Yeah.
out by the tennis
I
court or down by
misunderstood.
the
I thought we
track.
were charging for
No.
everyone to be able to park.
No.
I
If you
know
want
it's
it reserved, and they'll paint your little square.
also,
Only those that want a reserved spot.
I gotcha. Okay.
I think it's also
That
difficult.
clarifies a few of my concerns.
It's also difficult for seniors to come up with fundraising ideas that they can get everyone to do. So I think this is a kind of creative way to try to get some money towards their class trip, towards their prom, towards all the activities at the end of the year, to try to lessen that blow. So I think that's a really good thing.
You can also get $15 back if you take care of
Right,
the paint.
exactly.
So really,
So-
really could be paying $15 instead of
Right.
30, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, if the kids are behind it, then I think it's great.
So the kids met last year at the end of the year, is that how it worked?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep,
So they already have class officers and all that?
they do,
Okay.
they do.
Make a motion to approve the senior, or change in parking. I don't know what you wanna call it.
I'll second it with an amendment, though.
Okay.
That we also put reserved spots for teachers. So staff,
For
so
staff.
staff have parking.
Yeah.
We need a spot for parking, I agree. We don't have a designated spot, and so if you're okay with that, I'd like to add that as an amendment to it.
All right, I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? It passes. Thank you.
Okay.
That was Ann and Carol. Those that didn't happen to hear it on the.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for me?
I just have two super quick
Oh,
questions.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I know it's time to move on. Just going back to the schedules, I know they're still working on being finalized for teachers. I'm assuming some students may not have their schedules yet.
So the teachers' ones are finalized.
Okay.
And the students, they do have schedules. What we're doing right now is balancing them, so we're trying, like if a class only had 8, but the same class, 2
Okay.
periods later, had 15, we're trying to put balance between them.
Yep.
And then the next board meeting, I should be able to give you a class size average after
Okay.
that work is done.
So for any student that has their schedule, but it might be tweaked due to when the classes run perhaps, when
Exactly.
would they anticipate receiving their new schedule?
So I'm hoping by, not this week, but next week, we should have almost our full staff in every day. And I know that Linda has sent out a request for those days for the staff to come in. And so I'm hoping by the end of next week,
Okay, perfect.
maybe even before.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you. And
you're
then
welcome.
just regarding the athletic director and moving over to the final forms, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Is that an app?
It is.
Okay.
It's also, you can also go online to the website.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
I have 2 letters sitting on the front to bring up here from different students. So I'll just bring up a couple things that are in there. One was asking for a way to have other students that don't normally participate in things be pushed into participating in things,
Yeah.
whether it be volunteer or other clubs or anything else. The other one's a hot topic, which I had a nice whole letter for, is the policy change for them to be able to wear hats. It seems to be a hot topic button that I got a lengthy letter on, that the hats went away for this coming year. I'm just throwing it out there to you.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's a
Thank you
topic
for
they
the
seem to be
heads
very-
up.
We
Yeah.
just talked, Becca and I talked about that today, and she had an interesting perspective. So if you ever are interested in revisiting the dress code, I have some feedback on
Okay.
hats.
All right, thank you.
I think you might need to revisit the dress code a little anyways. I want to take a look at it.
Okay.
Hot topic for sure.
I had a couple on there. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to be here.
Next up was we have a lengthy packet in our packet from the athletic director, Mr. Larson. Does anybody have any questions on it? It's pretty in depth. It's got nice pictures here and everything else.
Very, very impressed.
It is very in-depth.
So one of the biggest areas is there were some issues in the weight room, but John's already worked with Charlie and with our phys ed teacher to rectify that. It's just way too crowded in there, but that'll be taken care of before students arrive. Field repairs are in progress, encumbered from last year, as we already talked about. Some of these items, if you look at any of the cracks around posts that have been planted in concrete, or any photograph you see at the base of a fence post in grass where it's pushed out, that's because the concrete footings when the facility was built in 2003 just weren't dug low enough to sit below frost line. So at some point over the years, virtually all of these footings have been pushed up. That's not something we'll repair all at once. That's something we will repair one facility at a time. Obviously, you're all aware that the tennis courts are on your to-do list as soon as we can find that kind of money. And that's where you'll see some of those photos from. So those are common things. The field condition issues I don't think should be ongoing. They were isolated to a few locations, and they should be fixed at this point. You also saw a photograph of one of either the baseball or softball infield that had weeds growing through it at one point, and I walked out to that facility the next day and it was perfect. And that's because most schools turn their infields at the beginning of each season. So the photograph would have probably been taken in the opposite season or prior to the field being turned. But it didn't reflect the condition that was outside at the time you were shown that photo. There are issues, though. I mean, a lot of this is going to land in our capital plan, our 5-year capital plan. Things like the.
We have the field. Don't we have a capital reserve for the field?
We have a reserve fund for athletic fields, and we also have a 5-year capital plan that helps us plan out when we're going to do each thing. So some of the things that came up last year that are on that list now with higher priority, we revised those over the summer, so we're doing it right now. Our batting cages and the foul ball catching net behind the baseball field is kind of sagging, and it looks like it might just be a repair as opposed to a replacement.
I don't like to be a jerk, but a lot of these things that I coach up here, I brought up a lot of these things that are already around, and this is why I've had some change, because some of these things have been known for a while, especially in soccer. I also ref soccer. I have to tell everybody to be careful of our own fields because of the issues. So they were known by people that could have taken care of it, so I'm glad that it's actually being taken care of.
So why are the bleachers broken? Is that an issue of misuse or somebody messing up?
Are you
Not that you know.
The bleachers in
Yeah,
the
there's pictures.
building?
Yeah, the cracks and
Yeah, the cracks are from practice with the baseballs in the spring. They're not. We do have nets up, and sometimes they're supposed to go the length right, and sometimes they just shoot off sideways.
And those bleachers in the gymnasium are actually already on our 5-year capital plan. It's going to take more than 5 years to do it, by the way. This is the nature of capital plans, is you make one and then you push things out depending on what resources we have available. But replacing those bleachers is already there. It's one of the higher priorities within the building.
So this report is really comprehensive and detailed, and I applaud John Larson for putting it together. Would it be possible to have him come speak, kind of like an update after the fall?
I'm sure he'd be thrilled.
Buildings and Ground will invite him here for.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just to, and also to kind of put on record of the improvements that are being made so that everyone is aware.
So the question I have, of course, is the soccer field safe? They're gonna start games immediately, and they're saying there's holes and foreign objects.
The stuff out there is easy to fill. It just needs somebody to go do it. Trust me, it just could have been done. As long as they put some fill out there and throw some grass seed down, it shouldn't be an issue.
And I haven't been out there today, but depending on where they are with the work we already encumbered, it may be done. Also, we're talking about practice fields, not the varsity field.
Yeah.
Varsity field is in very good condition.
Which,
Not that we don't want them to be safe, we do. But in terms of competition on the varsity field, we could start tomorrow.
Okay.
I think Jason made a good point that a lot of these things have, I don't mean we, the board, but people have known about, but it's never, I've never seen anything that's
It's very comprehensive, right. It's
And
excellent.
it's a tool to use.
I like we're gonna have before pictures and after pictures. I'm a big fan of it because, since I run a whole building myself, it's all before and after pictures so I can show.
I mean, and just the grading of everything, what's satisfactory and what isn't, and, great job. Obviously, he's used some kind of software because there's NAs in here, so, but, I mean, it's a beautiful document.
We hired Mr. Larson because he had experience. He's a professional athletic director, and this is what you get.
Next up in our packets, we have a technology report for Mr. Dumond. Any questions on his report?
Yeah, I just repeat my previous concern that we couldn't open our package.
I could open it on my laptop.
Sure I
I
have
couldn't open it on my phone.
Yeah, we have that
I
note.
tried both, I tried different Google accounts and I couldn't,
No, it wouldn't open on my phone with
and
my
it wouldn't
Google
open on
accounts.
my
Yeah.
laptop.
It was sent like this. Interesting. Sure. So, just, yes, I mean, I get to open it this way, but
Yep.
some people cannot. Okay. Curriculum assessment stuff.
So Mr. Zokis is on vacation at the moment, but you have his written report. In the revised professional development plans, each teacher will set 3 goals. One will be aligned to a system-wide goal that we're setting for the 3 schools through a bunch of committee work. This is the goal that Matt and all of the stakeholders he's worked with in the schools have arrived at for next year. For each school, then, there is a school-wide goal, which will be the second goal that each teacher aligns a personal goal to. And this is about restorative justice, discipline. You've already heard a little bit about behavior and discipline tonight. You will hear discussion of the same thing at your other board meetings, and you will be hearing more all year. And we are not the only school system having these conversations right now. This has become very common across our country. And then the third goal that each educator sets in their professional development plan is a personal goal, and therefore is not here. New teacher orientation is scheduled. As you can see, we're holding an administrator retreat for 3 days. Next week, the first day, our system-wide cabinet first, pretty small group, including the principals. Second day, bringing in folks who didn't attend our planning retreat last year, but this year it will include assistant principals, IEP team chairs, school counselors, a few others, IT administrators, Sean Asdot, a pretty big group. The second and third days, the second day we'll all spend together. The third day we'll break everybody up by school so that each principal has some time with a bigger team from their building to align what we've talked about, hopefully over the first 2 days, with what they'd like to accomplish entering the school year. During those times, we'll be planning opening days. There is one common opening day, PD day, for teachers from all 3 schools. That'll be held here at the high school, and then there is one opening day at each school. So every teacher, every educator, no matter which school they work at, will have one day in their building and then one day here with everybody else. I think that summarizes.
So when you say staff are coming in next week, are we paying them to come in? Is that how it's working?
The folks who are coming in next week are on administrative contracts.
Okay, all right.
So yes, but not any more than you would expect to.
No, exactly. I just was curious when you were talking about staff coming in. I didn't know if we had teachers or, okay.
And when I was talking about it, our school counselors have 15 extra days that they work.
Oh, they do, okay.
So it helps them close up the year and
Sure.
get ready.
Thank you.
The team chairs work some extra days, they all.
Just want to make sure.
The assistant, that's a good question. The assistant principals also have extra days. Yeah. failed.
Any other questions, concerns? Oh, all right, moving on to the superintendent report.
Okay, I have put a report on the table in front of you, 5 pages, get ready. But the first item is, well, actually, you know what? I'd like to dovetail with the new Director of Guidance report regarding personalized pathways. Nothing you heard from Linda Sheff should be new to you. We've been talking about pathways and how career pathways can contribute to the school's goal, which is to personalize education for every student. If you were here around graduation, I don't know if it's still up, but there was a bulletin board posted outside of the school counseling office that celebrated postgraduate plans of 46 graduates out of the 86. 30 of them were admitted to 4-year institutions, 16 were admitted to community college or technical schools. There were 40 other graduates, though, this year, and I am keenly interested in knowing more about what their postgraduate plans are, and in the future, I would like to see 86 names on a bulletin board celebrating our students' postgraduate plans with appropriate value given to what each of them has worked with their school counselors and their teachers to personalize their program for, so that they can be prepared for whatever they want to come next after high school. To that end, even though Linda was talking about doing this work going forward because it's only her 7th day, Matt Jazokis and I have already been working with the owner of the Alton Dance Academy to create ELOs. You already know this. For our students who are already enrolled in those classes. Our hope is to use that as a template. It's not a one-off kind of a thing. We want to create something that we can then take to other potential community partners and offer the same thing. It's consistent with policy that you already adopted here at this table last year. I have been in touch with the superintendent at the Governor Wentworth District, and we're working on setting up a meeting with the folks who run the CTE center there. In New Hampshire, under the law, students may begin career and technical study their sophomore year in high school. At Prospect Mountain, we have not made that available to our students. Prospect Mountain students are allowed to start going to LRTC their junior year. Now, most of the programs, many of the programs are 2-year programs, so it may not matter in some cases, but some of the programs do offer a 3rd year, and our students have not been eligible. Because we experience high demand, the number of seats we budget for are used every year. It would not be as simple for us as saying, okay, sophomores, you can now go tour, visit LRTC, and then apply, because we have a bunch of juniors ready to do that. Or, I'm sorry, rising sophomores and rising juniors I'm talking about. But if we just opened it up saying, hey, this must be a good idea, we would double the number of students potentially looking to go in 1 year, which would cost us twice as much money, and we have a budget for this. So I'm exploring already with the Department of Ed whether or not expanding pathways as a way to address learning loss due to the pandemic might make use of ESSER funds an appropriate transitional plan for us if we wanted to start opening up vocational programs to 10th graders. We'll get back to you.
So, Tim, is there a age requirement? Do students have to be 16 to be enrolled?
It depends on the program.
Okay. And then my other question or comment was, even if it's a 2-year program, could we do a creative independent study for a 3rd year?
So you are one step ahead of me, Mrs. Pierce. If a student is in a 2-year vocational program, say in the building trades, for example, and finishes that program during 10th and 11th grades, then that student's senior year could be a shortened academic schedule here at the school to meet graduation requirements, and then a work-based extended learning opportunity aligned to what they studied in the vocational program for credit from us, which would be entirely consistent with a student's personalized pathway,
I like that.
potentially.
Thank you.
There's a lot of peace. So I wanted to add that to Linda Sheff's report. Reading instruction we've talked about. The reason this is in my report to you is because I sent an email to the entire joint board. You know I don't do that very often, And when I do, because that's a quorum of all of you, I want it on the public record that I've talked to you about this. So all I've got written here on my report is sort of a summary about the science of reading and whole language and some of the controversy that's been going on in education over the last few years. If you haven't started listening to the podcast, Sold a Story, I do recommend it. It's pretty engaging, and I think you'll enjoy it. You'll be hearing more about this, more from Matt Jazokis, I imagine, than from me, but we've already started doing some PD. And I think the day I emailed you was one of the days that people were here looking at some different ways of doing reading instruction that we might want to consider. But I'm going to move on. Regarding grades at the high school, Chaley, in her report, addressed some changes in the student handbook. I think it might be a little early to expect her student handbook to be completely revised and ready to go, but I think this section is. She and her support staff have gone through the previous handbook and found references to discipline that were sort of dispersed in different places and put them all into one section that you can see in the proposed handbook here. The way our attendance policy and procedures, disciplinary policy and procedures, and grading policies and procedures have overlapped has created some situations from time to time where one might argue that due to discipline, a child had a harder time accessing educational services. The law for over a decade now, multiple changes in federal and state law, have guided schools towards always providing educational services during disciplinary situations. So if a student is suspended out of school, even if a student is expelled, the board continues to be responsible for providing educational services. Therefore, it could be challenging, if we were questioned or challenged, to explain why, as a result of discipline, a student couldn't attend a class and therefore hadn't been able to, I'll say demonstrate competency, but let's just say get a passing grade. So I think the revisions to the handbook are consistent with trying to clarify any gray area that might have existed in that regard. If that's too vague, ask me questions. But I think, or ask Chaley questions. But I think the intent here is to make sure that it's never the case that a student's behavior that results in discipline then supersedes that student's access to an education. I'll give you an example, not because it's happened, but because it could. Say a student is tardy to school a number of times. We have an administrative failure policy, but the student misses a certain class during first period due to these tardies. That class happens to also be being taught during fifth period when the student has a study hall. And the student asks, oh, can I go make up those classes during fifth period? We would be unwise to say no. We should make that available to that student. And then attending those classes could be a way for that child, that student, to avoid that administrative failure, at least in that class. It's just an example, if that helps. I don't know if it does or not, if it makes it worse. Questions about the handbook, I'll refer to the interim principal, but I think it's an important topic that we're going to be hearing more about. At the same time, and I think I've conflated 2 items on my report, so there you go. I skipped to 3 and now I'm on 2. Sorry about that. Do that sometimes. Competency-based reporting. So if you look at item 3, you see what I was just talking about, which is language in the student handbook, and how students being excluded from school does not eliminate our responsibility to provide access to educational services. I apologize for taking those out of order. Okay, grading practices. We give 100% number and letter grades here at the high school. Since 1998, New Hampshire has been leading the country in adopting competency-based standards. The italicized section in my report is from a state website. I'm not going to read it to you. It is the Department of Ed's expectation that we have all adopted some form of competency-based assessment and grade reporting. And here in our 3-school system, we are inconsistent among how the 3 schools do that. Some schools have chosen to eliminate grades entirely, not always a popular choice with parents and students, particularly at the high school level. But some schools have done the hard work of talking to everybody because they thought it was important. Other schools have used a combination of traditional grades and competency assessment. A competency assessment is typically on a 1 through 4 point scale from developing the skill to mastery of the skill. And in each class, what most schools have done is identify what some people call power standards, or the essential competencies. And although there may be 30 things that are covered in a class, on a report card, the school might include those 4 essential competencies, or those power standards, and rate each student on that 0 to 4, 1 to 4 scale in terms of how he or she is demonstrating mastery or attainment of those competencies. So there's a conversation to have here about grades and competencies that we have not had at this high school, at least that I don't think the board has had at this high school. And it really needs to be had with everybody, with teachers, with students, with parents, and with all of you. So I'm introducing the topic tonight because you're going to hear Matt Jazokis talking more about it in the future, but that really means we need to be talking to staff about it and to parents and students about it this year.
I mean, English is a perfect example. You can get a C in English but not know how to read because you have failed the reading part but got an A in the writing part, or vice versa. So the purpose of competencies is obviously to make sure a student is reading and writing competently when they leave our high school, period. And it applies to math and other subjects too, but I'm just saying that I was shocked that Prospect Mountain didn't have competencies. And it's really time. We need to do it.
It also connects to the discussion about things like attendance failures, because if I can average a 96 on all of your quizzes and tests without coming to your class, what does that tell us about your class? Mm-hmm. Or maybe about me. But I think that divorcing these two things, student conduct is important. And we have all kinds of different ways to assess and talk to students and parents about conduct. But mastery of content is also important. And historically in our educational system, we've conflated the two. And some students are able to get good grades, not so much through mastery of content, but through agreeable conduct. Mm-hmm. And other students might struggle to earn good grades, not because they can't master content, but by virtue of disagreeable conduct. And we need to continue to hone our ability as institutions, all of us in schools, to separate these things and be good at both. Be good at talking to kids and parents about conduct and what's appropriate in our schools, but then when it's time to focus on mastery of content, that is what we should be doing, talking about and assessing.
And we should have a system where they can recover from loss of competency. So, summer school. Do we have summer school in this school?
Some years we have, some years we have not.
So it should be a recovery for your competencies. So if you're not found competent in a subject, you should be able to make that up by going back into the competencies. They shouldn't just be considered failure. They should be given the opportunity to achieve those competencies. So I think we need more of that too. Encouraging the kids to become competent if they're not, as opposed to A versus F.
So it's the time of year when we talk about big ideas for the coming year. Mm-hmm. And here are a couple of them. And I think they're linked, which is why I talked about the attendance and discipline along with competency and conduct. An update on the website. It is live. It is 4 sites under one domain, pmsau.org. The content was brought over from the existing sites. So we are in the long process of updating and filling in gaps. You gave your feedback at your June meeting, which we heard. One of our tech integrators retired at the end of the year. and is able to give us 4 part-time weeks during the month of August to help us hopefully finish up, but certainly make a lot of progress on that work. We will be restructuring the menu that some of you had comments about at your last meeting when I was showing you the site. We've heard that the staff directories need to be easily accessible, and also lately I've been hearing that the school calendars need to be front and center and really
Yes.
easy to find. So we'll take care of those.
It's because it was under the category administration, so they thought of you
I
and
get it.
the principal. They didn't think that that was the administration of the building.
I was in the meeting when we talked about this, and then I went to look for the calendar myself, and I couldn't find it.
I know.
So I think all of those
It's
headings
all over
might go away
Facebook.
in the menu.
When is school starting? Yeah.
Yeah. There is a search feature, however, so you could click the magnifying glass and type calendar. That's an option. But we're hearing it, and we want to make the site. The sites are attractive. Our ability to post news and to the live feed is wonderful, and the automatic integration with social media looks pretty good. We're not even done deploying it all yet, but we've been able to seamlessly post to Facebook. I imagine some of you have seen that, and it's working pretty well.
I think what we saw, we liked, a little tweaking.
Yep.
But to quote Jason here, change is hard. So some people, they're just used to doing something, parents go to a certain place, find something, and now they're a little bit different path, so.
Well, I think that, I don't really think there's any question that these sites will be much easier to keep updated and to make dynamic. The news and live feed features that you've seen a little bit of, you're going to be seeing updated regularly, because instead of running, what a lot of schools do is they run every change to their website through a single individual on their staff who's trained to make changes to the website. What Aptogy's, remember my favorite word, ThrillShare app allows us to do is we can distribute that responsibility to a lot of different people. So within their areas of expertise, John Larson, for example, in athletics, he'll be able to post as the athletic director or athletic department to the high school or middle school websites, and he can have permissions to do that using an app on his phone. He doesn't need to learn programming language or anything fancy. He can just do it. He can even, as we train more people, assign some of that to coaches. So when a game ends, the coach could open an app on their phone, enter the final score, and just hit post, and it's on our websites.
Oh, great.
So I think you will see it work, and pretty quickly. We're doing a lot of training in the coming month during August. We'll also have the mobile app ready for everybody to download, and I anticipate about 10 days before the first day of school, we'll hit parents and guardians and students hard a few times using our mass communication systems to follow this link, go download the app, get it today. My experience has been that the first time you use something like that to announce a 2-hour delay, the next day everybody's using it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to wait that long. We're hoping that people will do it in September.
Just a 2-hour delay first day of school.
2 more items for you. Thanks, Mr. Henry.
Trying to be helpful.
2 more items for you tonight from me. Open enrollment. I have met with 12 students and their parents and guardians who have applied to attend here under open enrollment. They have signed, their parents and guardians have signed releases for us to request records from their previous schools, which we intend to do tomorrow morning. And I have begun the process of communicating with the superintendents in the districts where they have previously been attending school.
Are they all freshmen? Sorry.
They are not.
No.
So you at a previous meeting voted to make 30 9th grade seats and 10 10th grade seats available under open enrollment. The number of current applicants is below the 30 and 10 threshold, so we don't have any kind of competitive admissions process to think about. However, in the future, we really need to be planning for the future while we kind of get through this year and today. So for the future, we will need one. It's one of the items that we have to submit to the Department of Education. So among my handouts tonight is the admissions criteria document that you saw in April, and board members suggested a couple of additions to this, which have been made. I didn't highlight them, I'm sorry, but they were your suggestions. And then attached to that is a draft. You don't need to talk about it tonight because I don't intend to ask you to do anything with it tonight. But this is an admissions process that we've drafted that anticipates more applicants than you have seats available. So a document like this will need to be finalized, approved by you, then I'll send it into the Department of Education, and we'll need it in place for next spring. But at the moment, you don't have 30 ninth graders and 10 10th graders looking to come here. So what I'm seeking tonight is your okay to admit the 9th and 10th graders who have applied, which is 9 of the 12. Regarding the 3 rising 11th graders who have expressed interest in attending this school, there are other ways we could think about that, and I'd like to talk to you about each of those 3 students in non-public. But I would look tonight for your approval to enroll, to offer admission and enroll the 9 9th and 10th graders who have applied under open enrollment. Now, we all know that, we know what this is, right? We're doing something for the first time in a way that nobody else in the state has tried to operate under this law. And we all know that there's a chance that other districts might not view the law the same way the commissioner's attorney viewed it when we asked him for technical advice back in April of 2022. And more specifically, those districts might object to paying tuition. So I think you might want to be prepared if we admit 9 students for this year to be the first class of open enrollment students, that you're prepared to offer them an education regardless of what happens next with this process. That's my suggestion to you, because I think that would reassure those families who are willing to be a part of this experiment, if you will, with you. So it is something to think about.
So do you need a motion?
Oh, I will, yeah. But certainly, I mean, I think it might merit some discussion. If you're all already on the same page, that's terrific, but.
Well, I'll take a motion first, we can discuss it.
I make a motion that we accept the 9 students, 9th and 10th graders, and via the open enrollment process.
Second.
Now the discussion.
I think we would probably need to add to that, well, I guess as long as we full well know we might not be able to retrieve our money, we will, but we knew that from the beginning, that this was gonna be a pathway for us to try.
I do have a question about the relationship with the other schools. I assume they're coming from another school, they're not homeschooled now. It indicates in your report that you received releases. Have we done anything with those? Have we contacted the other schools?
So I've been calling superintendents of the other schools. Our intention is to send the releases and request records tomorrow morning, assuming that.
So the superintendents know we're trying to take some of their kids that have been paid for?
That might not be exactly how I would express it, but yes.
Taking some of their kids.
I was just curious where we were.
I haven't been able to get in touch with all of them yet, but I've been trying, and I'm trying to speak personally with each superintendent.
And we
So
may
how
have.
many schools are we talking about for these 9?
The 12 students live in 7 different towns, believe it or not.
7 different towns. Wow.
You've noticed I've been looking for the particular document I wanted to refer to. So.
I'm just curious as to how many
No.
fights we might have ahead of us.
There will be no fighting. We have students from Pittsfield. I have not been able to speak yet with Dr. Lane, but he and I have spoken in the past, and this won't come as a surprise, and again, I'm in the process of doing that. We have a student from New Durham. I have had some conversations with the superintendent at Governor Wentworth. We have a student from Farmington. I've been having difficulty finding anybody who can return a call from Farmington lately, but I'll keep working on it. We have, I already told you, Pittsfield, I think there are 4 students from Pittsfield. Here, we have students from Epsom interested in this, which surprised me a little bit. It was one of my first phone calls.
Right.
So that's a school where they leave their middle school and they go to a new school.
They go to
That they
Pembroke.
perceive as not an Epsom school. That might have something to do with it. I've also had feedback from a family residing in Belmont about this. They ended up moving out of the state, but their intention was to send a student here if they could. Another one that I'm not sure why surprised me a little bit, but they made a very interesting point that going forward, as we prepare for next year with a more formal process for admission and some time for the Department of Ed to wrap its arms around all this, along with us and other districts, real estate agents might be particularly interested in this as they market properties in the area to people, because schools are one of the things that people think about when they choose where to live.
At this school, but the real estate agents used the fact that in Barnstable you could send your kid to any high school you wanted to. Because we sent them to 12 different schools.
We do have a couple of students who were enrolled at VLAX last year, and another who was homeschooling. So it is 25%, although they're small numbers to use percentages, but 3 students who were either homeschooling or in VLAX.
And we're gonna invite these students to freshman orientation and have a separate breakout for them.
You got it. We'll so first of all, invite them all to come to the school as a group, separate from freshman orientation or anything else. And then on the morning of freshman orientation, my thinking has been that we would bring not only the 9th graders, but all the open enrollment students in for a period of time, and then send the 9th grade students off with the rest of the 9th grade class for the rest of the day.
And some of the kids know them. Some of the 9th graders know some of the kids because of sports. They've been playing the Rebs with them, indoor soccer with them. So there's a lot of kids that they're familiar with already that have expressed interest in coming to Prospect.
I think you'll see some, in the future we'll see more. There's some hesitancy on some parents, and we'll see how this goes, but especially, we'll let your kid try it first and
Yeah.
see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen exactly.
Yeah. So we had a motion, correct?
Yeah, I made a motion, and we have to accept the fact we may not get their tuition, but I'm okay with that
And
myself.
we would carry that, if that expectation is set for those students in freshman year, we're gonna expect to set that for the next 4 if they stay
I
with
know.
us.
That's the problem, but
But it won't be any impact per se because our numbers are low. So I think starting out, at least we can, Department of Education getting their hands around us and everybody else, it's a good investment for the future.
I agree.
I think Lauren has a great question, though, that we didn't necessarily answer. And I think that's something that we will have to discuss in the spring. So students that we didn't obtain tuition from, what is our policy going to be? I think,
Yeah.
Carol, you just said you're comfortable with just kind of seeing how it goes, and I agree. It is a
Work in progress.
work in progress, correct. But I think moving forward, that may be a part of the policy that we want to revisit. And,
And then if we don't get them to pay the school districts they're coming from, and then we have the new school year coming next year, and then we still have more kids that wanna do it,
Right.
are we gonna turn kids away and say no?
I think that has to be worked out with
I
the
mean, I know we
Department of
can't
Ed.
answer those questions now, but it's something
Right.
to be prepared for, and I feel like we never really said this to like the public when we were advertising
Right,
for
true.
this open enrollment. We didn't say like, well, just in case we don't get the blessing from their district, we're gonna let them in for free. And I feel like that's a little
I
bit.
think the test case here is the districts that have contracts with other schools. So, for example, Gilmington has a contract with Guilford. And their perception is that they can't send anyone here because of that contract. I know that for certainty. So then the question is, how do we challenge that? And, you know, I think that's where we're gonna end up going to the Department of Ed and saying, how do we challenge this? You know, with lawyers, or, you know, is it a viable option to invite Gilmington kids here when they're saying they have to go to Guilford?
I think that's
don't know.
something we're also not just saying it's automatically going to be at no cost. We're still going to be going after the money with the students that come here. You know, we're going after the school districts along with the Department of Education. So we want to stop that process if we
Yeah.
can get that.
I think as a parent, though, they want to know that their child can come whether their district denies them the money or not, and that's the
And
issue right
continue
now.
to
Right.
graduate
Right.
from here,
So I think
too.
this first round we're talking about, if we accept these, that these people would be able to stay no matter what happens. But we're going to have to be ready for make that decision come spring of, do we continue on that path or do we do something else? If they're not going to pay.
Yeah. I'd like to see the opportunity for Gilmington to come here too.
Well, they're pretty
No.
close, aren't they?
Right.
I know
Ironworks kids.
some parents have the opportunity to come here.
I just know from my connections to Gilmington.
Wasn't that contract up and did they renew it?
They renewed it. They used us as leverage. We are doing.
That's okay.
Okay. They use us as leverage.
We worked with them, we worked with Gilmington a long time
Uh-huh.
on a tuition agreement.
I'll say in public, they used us to get a better contract over where they went to their agreement again. And made us jump through a bunch of hoops, and we gave them a really good deal, and they didn't present it to their own town. There's some people that are very upset the school board didn't present it to the town, and they just went their own thing. There, go on the school board, if you hear me, I don't care. It's what they did.
Well, the truth is the truth.
It's fact.
Yes,
It's
it is.
fact.
Right.
It's okay, so any other?
All those in favor?
Yep, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We're good to go.
Thank you. And then my final item tonight, I promised you at your last meeting, and this is you have a handout with 2 pages related to this item. This is a financial item. I presented you a memo, I didn't bring a new copy of it tonight, at your last meeting about the effect of the 3% pool budgeting practice over the years relative to inflation, and what's happened with collective bargaining agreements, especially in recent years, has exceeded the wage growth that our employees who are not covered by collective bargaining agreements have experienced. So we took some time. So first of all, benefits. We've talked a lot about benefits and how many different groups we have for healthcare and all that sort of thing. I worked with one representative from each town on this board, Mrs. Landry and Mrs. McLeod, to have a first meeting and start talking about that. I think we showed you some of the results of that work. We'll continue that work over the next couple of months. Tonight, I'm not proposing any benefits changes. One thing I'd like to talk to you about in non-public with regards to a particular employee, but that's an outlier. So benefits in general, I think there's a benefit, pardon the pun, to taking another couple of months to get this right. It will give us time to talk to the employees. One of you suggested that, I think, at your last meeting. It'll give us time to ask our non-union employees, what benefits do you value the most, rather than us try to guess. It'll give us a chance to budget for fiscal '25 based on any benefits changes you decide to make, if we do it by October. It will also allow us the rest of the year to plan with employees if there are going to be any changes in their benefits experience, whether it's more cost, or they want to change a plan, or start a 403B, whatever it is, we'll have all that time to do that. So I think we get the budget, we get to work with employees, and we get to have more input. These are all positives. We can get that done in the next couple of months. We've done enough of the work now, but I think we identified what the 3 or 4 big questions are, and it's just a matter of answering them. On the topic of wages, I also told you at your last meeting that I would bring you the attached proposals, and that's why they're here. I finished around 6:15, I'm sorry. Now you know. why I joined you at 6:20 this evening. But it's based on work we've been doing for weeks. So the first thing I want to recommend that won't come as a surprise to you is a round of ESSER-funded retention bonuses for these employees. But I've narrowed the scope of this significantly. When you were doing retention bonuses during the pandemic, they were for all employees with an even hand. We're talking about non-union support staff, not licensed, not serving under an educator license, not administrators. These are the folks who are typically lower wage earners in school systems, and therefore increases that are based on percentages are less for them. 3% of $15 an hour doesn't feel like a great wage to the person who makes, like a great increase to the person who makes $15 an hour. So this is that group of employees. There are, I didn't count, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, looks like 24, who fall into this category as I've defined it. A $500 retention bonus with the associated benefits that we're required to add would total $14,418. This is a well-established legal use of ESSER funds. You've done it here at the high school. Alton's done it, Barnstead's done it, other school districts have done it. You could vote to do this tonight, and we could do it as soon as the business office has the capacity. No promises that it would be next week or anything like that, but as soon as they can.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the non-union support staff bonuses as listed in the total cost of $14,418.
Second.
Sorry.
And then Laura seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, passes.
The next sheet's difficult to decipher, and I struggled with ways to make it simpler and probably failed. It's attached by a staple to the one you were just looking at, and it's printed in color. The color coding goes like this. Any line that is not highlighted with any color hasn't changed since you voted wage adjustments, salary adjustments in May. So I think you can ignore those. Anything that is highlighted in red is an employee I have appointed using the authority you voted to give me to appoint employees between your last meeting and this meeting. So those actions have already been taken because you allowed me to take them. You're allowed to yell at me if you don't like them, but they've been taken. Anything highlighted in yellow is something I'm proposing to you tonight. And I can go through those in detail, though if you wish to talk about the rationale regarding a particular employee, that should be done in non-public. In general, I can tell you that I ended up using our collective bargaining agreements as the most important guideline for this work. So in the right-hand column of the people highlighted in yellow, with just a couple of exceptions, you'll find most of them I've based on one of our other pay scales. Because if the same person were employed in one of those roles covered by a CBA, this is what we'd be paying them. And you'll see that most of those constitute increases, which kind of supports the idea that collective bargaining has outpaced typically 2 to 3 or 4% a year non-union employee salary increases. And this wasn't a big topic until the last few years when minimum wage jobs have escalated dramatically. And I mean, the folks working in our school kitchens could go get jobs in any restaurant kitchen, anyone in these towns, and probably get raises. So I think that these are very reasonable, based on something that means something to us, scales, because these are scales we use for educators. There are a couple that are not. If you see market adjustment, it means I didn't find a comparable scale. And for example, I just mentioned the folks who work in our kitchen. For them, I didn't go to a CBA. We made a pretty big adjustment to those wages last summer, and I'm recommending another big but not as big. It's half what we did last summer.
I'll just throw this out there, and just in my county, last year we did 10% for non-union across the board, this year 7%, and then the state just did 10% across the board for state employees for the biggest adjustments ever. Not that anybody likes to hear that, but it's just where the inflation's gone and the market is gone. I just sat on the New Hampshire Retirement Board today as a trustee, and we just raised the executive director salary up significantly because they were way behind, more than probably people would want, but this is the way the market has gone. So it's just what's going on.
I guess my question, Tim, is, you know, you have already appointed the ones that are in the red, rouge,
yeah.
whatever. Is there a reason that you did not appoint any of the others?
That I didn't make these increases? Because I told you that I would bring it to you, and I told them that I would bring it to you.
Okay.
So the day after...
You don't have any concerns,
Nope.
so...
The day after your last board meeting, I shared the same memo that I presented you. This is all in public anyway, right?
Yep.
So the same memo that I presented to you, I shared with these employees. I wrote them each, I don't know if everybody, but I wrote many of them notes, letting them know what was going on, and that I would be getting back to you on this topic at tonight's meeting. So there was no reason to charge ahead. And I think when I don't need to exercise that authority without you, I shouldn't.
Because the Reds just once he hired. The yellow ones are already still here,
Right.
waiting for
We
us.
needed an interim principal. I told you I was going to hire an interim principal. I hired an interim principal. But
No,
many of these things
I'm
could
just
wait.
saying I fully support, so...
So you need a motion?
First of all, we got a new budget.
So I included a budget analysis so Heidi wouldn't have to figure it out. So the total increases from fiscal '23 on this list amount to $54,435 annualized. So that's taking the hourly wages and multiplying by hours and days and that kind of thing. The 3.5% pool, which is what it was this year, budget line in the high school budget was $51,075. So it's close. And the only reason it's close, because obviously there are some increases here that are significantly more than 3.5%, is because of positions we combined and eliminated
So talking about a $4,000 difference.
over the course of the last couple of months. So for example, instead of having, if you look at the building and grounds section, which is second from the bottom, you see Sean Asdot and Dan Bemis, but then you see the former facility supervisor position at the high school not filled. And as a result, you know, the total increase from year to year in all facilities positions is 146 to 159, so 13,000 something, between $13,000 and $14,000. You know, we've talked about, in the context of shared services, which I'm not getting into tonight because I'm planning a shared services report for next month. We've talked about some of the cost saving benefits along with curriculum alignment and some of the other things that come from shared services. Cost savings over time, you won't be spending less money, but it's important to factor in that over time everything increases also. So with 4 years into shared services in a certain category, we're spending about the same amount we were spending 4 years ago. We have saved money. So there are increases from last year, but those increases are really significantly mitigated by some of the other changes. It's also, I've got to finish with this. I think it's consistent with a philosophy that I've tried to, I'll say, sell to you for the last few years, which is we should employ only the number of educators and other staff we actually need, and we should compensate them as well as we can possibly afford to compensate them, because I think that's how we get the best performance, rather than having more people than we need but not being able to pay them competitively. I think that can result in some unintended consequences that are really bad for the system.
So I make a motion that we accept Tim's proposals for raises for Go on our spreadsheet, the tune of an increase of $54,435.
I second.
I was gonna say, it's only a second.
Yeah, no, I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? Nope. Anything else?
Well, that's all you want from me.
That's more than enough. Yeah, right. So, action items now. Moving on to foreign exchange student.
So, because of your meeting schedule, I had to accept a foreign exchange student for you, so that we could meet the deadlines of IUSA. You do have a copy of the school permission form in your packet. Your policy requires that the exchange agency be approved by CSIET, which IUSA is. This is a different agency than we've worked with in the past here at Prospect, but they did meet the requirements in your policy.
Make a motion, we approve the foreign exchange student, Antoine Grenier.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, we have is the driver's education bid. Heidi?
So I handed that out tonight. We did reach out to
Sent it out to
11
You did a good job.
and we only did have one that responded, Ready to Roll out of Rochester, with student tuition costs at $725.
I make a motion that we accept the Ready to Roll as our vendor for driver's ed.
I second.
$725 per student.
Second by Ann. Any discussion?
Do we know anything about Ready to Roll? Are they an existing company? Any access to feedback otherwise? I don't know.
I looked at their website right before the meeting. It was professionally done.
Okay.
We'll
Said
have
it was a
meeting.
former one of the co-owners was a former police officer. They seem to have good reviews.
Perfect.
I think at one time the driver's ed company actually used the inside of the building for classes. Do we still do that? Do we
Oh, yeah.
charge the company anything for that?
Do we charge them? No. We've never charged them in the past.
I think we're lucky to get them.
Yeah.
Do it.
Just asking the question.
It's important to the kids to have a vendor that comes here. It's hard for some of the kids to get out to the other communities to do their driver's ed.
It's cheaper than what I'm paying for right now.
Is it cheaper?
Yeah, a
I
little
asked
bit cheaper
Jason
than-
that.
I figured it was about.
We're going to Epsom. A little expensive, this one. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, passes. FY 23-24 handbooks. Who's got that? You, principal? What do you
In the
want?
packet. Oh, it's the interim principal's show,
All right.
but I'm here to help.
Here we go. So I don't know how this is done in the past and how detailed you'd like me to be. But I'd like to commend Amanda Russell. She's the assistant principal, and she really has worked hard on these handbooks this summer and really led the way when I was, busy in meetings, and I really appreciate her help. The focus was that we did, as Superintendent Broderick has said, is that we really wanted to separate an academic consequence from discipline consequences. And so that was the focus. We also knew that we are headed towards restorative practices. So one of the things that we looked at, and we can move forward in the handbook to we put everything under student safety and behavior, so which is on page 37
Can we
of the student handbook.
Okay.
These numbers are itty bitty in the corners.
Is there so there's a page here, Shelley, that has the highlights for the changes to the faculty and staff handbook?
Yes.
Is there one for the student handbook?
There's not. So for the student handbook, what I did, because there were so many, is I did them within red, within the packet itself. I thought it might be easier because we did some extensive changes for you to see where we had struck out language, where we had rearranged. So we called this new heading Student Safety and Behavior, and we went through and we just tried to streamline and kind of house everything under one heading. So with alcohol and drugs, we combined those two categories, and then we bulleted to create in what was formerly a really dense paragraph. We bulleted so that somebody looking up into the handbook could quickly see, you know, these are the things that you absolutely cannot have in school. We included a student's parked car because we don't want anybody transporting illegal substances to school and then dealing with those things in the parking lot. We created some new adapted language because we do believe that at the top of 38, we do believe that students, if they have had a rough year and they've had, you know, they've been caught with illegal substances at school, but they have responded to interventions and it's a new school year, we start fresh. But if we see that that fresh start is not being taken and that we're repeating the next year, then we can escalate to the superintendent and the school board to recommend stronger consequences. So we kind of wanted to walk in both of those worlds, is believing that, you know, we want to believe in the best and that students will turn around, but we also want to keep the school a safe place. What we did is we went through these first and second offenses, is we're really looking at, you know, there's minor things that students, they're all serious, but vaping is not the same as bringing marijuana to school. And we're trying to have the consequences be fitting and our interventions be fitting for what the students are presenting with, and having lots of opportunities for counseling and intervention. The woman that we hired, Lynn Anderson, to be in our social worker role, she's the student counselor for student intervention. She worked 20 years in diversion for the state of New Hampshire. She is used to working with high-risk students and their families. And so we believe she'll be a wonderful asset for some of these kids who are kicking up with these behaviors and really understanding it's not just that you've broken this rule and brought this on campus or doing this illegal activity, but why are you doing that, and how can we assist you in getting on the right track? So our offenses are, you know, we're taking it very seriously, but we're also not going to put a student out for 10 days for having a vape, because the educational consequences are so steep. So they'll range from 3 to 10 days, depending on the number of offenses and how many times that we've been dealing with it. We're also looking at in-school suspensions as a way to keep kids connected to the community, because if we put a student out for, let's say, 5 days for a vape, that student is at home and we don't have the same amount of control over their education. And so if we bring them into the building for part of that time, then we can be following up with them, making sure they're getting work from teachers and keeping ahead academically. So in no means do we want to make things less strict in terms of our expectations, but we want to make sure the consequences aren't hurting them academically. So one of the things that we've looked at, does anybody have questions on that?
How many?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
How many repeated, and you may have said this,
Right.
repeated offensive with in-school suspensions are allowed before we do something different?
Right. So Amanda and I have not worked that out yet, and we're definitely going to be consulting with the superintendent too. What I'd like to do too is it's really important for me that every student is treated equitably. So in the past, what I've created is a chart. So you look at the chart and you say, okay, this is the second time that we have caught you with a vape. Here is the consequence, and that consequence is the same across the board for every student. That's something that Amanda and I have not developed yet.
So in the interest of time, I just wanted to get to the hot button issues.
Sure.
Because everything else looks fine.
Okay.
To me. But I know that one of the things that the teachers were concerned about was cell phones.
Yes.
And in the new policy, on page 39,
Yes.
it says that students may use cell phones before and after school, between classes, or during lunch.
Yes.
Otherwise, during instructional time, cell phones and electronic devices are to be silenced and stowed. So, in my mind, that, and I just want to clarify, that means that cell phones are allowed during study hall.
So that kicked up to me in a meeting this week, and that was not something that we had addressed, because what I've been told is that depending on the study hall teacher, those are viewed differently and treated differently. My thought is that a study hall is for homework time and doing academic work. It's not necessarily a break. So my thought is that not having cell phones during study halls. So that's something that we'll have to look at as a faculty too. What are your thoughts?
Personally?
Yeah.
Personally, I think that it's a very big mountain to climb.
Yeah.
I think what has worked that I've seen is when it is a combination of half the study hall be no cell phones, and then partially have cell phones for the rest of the study hall.
Some students are gonna say they use their phones for research.
Yep.
Just gonna say right up front, that's gonna be coming up.
Yeah, and I think that, you have a lot on your plate, and I don't want to see you set yourself up for having too much on your plate. And I think that, and again, this is my own personal opinion, I feel like focusing on the no cell phones during the day it's a great first step, and sort of kind of acquiescing with the study hall. May meet them in the middle, but that's my own personal comment, and I just wanted to clarify, because I feel like that's going to be something that
That's that gray area, right?
that becomes gray area. And then the hats. So again, I want to give you our support, and I want to not get caught up in the minutia of the day-to-day. And I feel like some of these things really can bog administration down with hats and cell phones. So
Cell phones in study hall, so just in a paragraph above it, devices are not permitted during class or study hall.
without the teacher's consent.
Right, so.
Right,
So
and then
it's
it
still an
just becomes a
opportunity.
gray area, and then you get teachers that do and don't, and I'm just bringing the point up, that's all.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things I'm going to ask is for consistency during instructional time.
I agree.
Yeah.
What about swearing? I don't see anything in here. That's one of the biggest complaints I hear,
Yeah.
is that kids are swearing in the hallways at other kids, at teachers, but I don't see anything in the handbook about that. The consequences?
We had thought about it under insubordination. And so we have the 4-step response. Let's see where that is at.
I just saw that.
It starts on page 45, I believe.
Disrespect, profanity to any of the member of school. You got profanity right here.
Yep,
Examples of behaviors that may result in OSS included, that's on page 44. assault, bullying, destruction, disrespect, / profanity to any member of the school community. So it sounds like it just needs to be enforced.
Yeah, and so, and thank you for that. And so through this step process, we address that. So, you know, it could mean that you're asked to leave the teacher's classroom, you go to the ISS room, the teacher contacts home, and the student serves a detention. That's the first step. And each time, if it happened again, then it would be an administrative detention. And so we've built in each time a student acts up in that way, the consequences are steeper up until the fourth. In the past, after the fourth consequence, you would be thrown from the class and removed from the class, and you would receive an administrative F. And so we've taken that consequence out of there. Today, you know, we now have our Tier 3 intervention person in the school counseling department, so we're expecting that person would move in and help us. We're also instituting a vigorous student support team. So we're, you know, a student who is kicking up in class like this, then they would be brought to the student support team. There would be a behavior plan put in place. So we're doing a lot more in terms of supportive measures to stop that sort of behavior, because it is discouraging to teachers, and we want to make sure that teachers really feel supported in the building.
So what about just generally swearing? So obviously if they swear at a teacher, there's a very strong response. What if they're in the hallway swearing at each other, or in the classroom,
Right.
drop the F-bomb? What
Yeah.
kind of consequence?
So if it, you know, if it rises to our level, just that, you know, casual swearing within the classroom, the teacher would be that first intervention, you know, please don't use that language in here. In the hallway, that would be our plan. Amanda and I have talked that especially at the beginning of the school year, those first 6 weeks are extremely important in setting expectations, and we're going to be out and about. So, you know, we will be there as those casual swear words are thrown around to say, you know, this is not how we're going to be talking in this school, and talking about respect. Yeah. So there's lots of other changes. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions or concerns? Do we need a vote on that?
No. I think that it's a great start, and I think that, you
Yeah.
know, as you become more familiar with what's gonna work and what isn't gonna work,
Right.
then, I think to bring it back to the board or consult with Tim, I think we just kind of wanna give you our support.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I appreciate your advice.
I make a motion that we accept both handbooks as written.
Second.
Any other discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. None. Okay, equipment disposal.
So there's a copy of your policy to explain why this is in your packet, because you have to approve the list for disposal, and then there's a list of, I think it's all technology equipment that's outlived its usefulness for disposal.
I'll take a motion on it.
I make a motion, we approve the Prospect Mountain equipment disposal procedure.
Second?
All in favor, or any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none? And passes. All right, policies. Looks like we have first reading, a lengthy list of
A couple of things.
first reading. I'll just do a quick, make a motion for first reading of GACA, insurance buyout, GBEF, staff computer and communication, JICL-R, student technology acceptable use agreement for first reading.
I'll second.
All in favor of first reading?
Aye.
Opposed, all right. Second reading, policies. What was that? IIB, class size, IKF, graduation requirements, IKF-R, graduation requirements.
So you saw these at your last meeting.
Make
So
a
we second and final reading then? Second and final reading.
Make a motion that we approve the second reading of IIB class size, IKF graduation requirements, IKF-R graduation requirements.
discussion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. Okay, we go down to personnel.
It's somewhere in this packet.
Oh, it's somewhere in this.
Huge bag.
I make a motion that we accept the resignations
As presented.
as presented.
Second?
All in favor? I mean, any discussion first? My bad.
Isn't there another name to add?
Yep.
The resignations?
She was too fast for me. So on Friday, I received a letter of resignation from Amy Felker, school counselor.
Make a motion that we approve the resignations with the amendment of Amy Felker.
Second.
Thank you, Randy.
Any other discussion?
With regrets.
Regrets. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay, okay.
Anything to add to the new hires, Tim?
Well, no, so what I have in the pipeline is a school counselor candidate interviewed yesterday, references checked today, but probably going to hit my desk tomorrow, so I can't give you a name and a salary for that one.
Make a motion to give you authority to hire the person to
I
the job.
second.
During our time for our next meeting.
And likewise, an administrative assistant position, it's a 210-day position, supporting the athletic director and a couple of other administrative functions. Same thing, there's a candidate in the pipeline, but not to me yet.
I make a motion that we give Tim the authority to hire any additional staff as needed that we would then formally approve at our next board meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay.
Make a motion to approve the school year 23-24 new hires as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
I just have a question. Is the athletic director on here? And is he new hire?
We did that.
We did that last week.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know.
All right, so just because it said 23, 24, I didn't know if he would be included on that list too.
Yeah, we appointed a lot of new staff for next
Yeah.
year prior to the July
So it's
break.
not just a curious
So,
list?
no,
that's-
these are since the last time you met.
Since the last meeting, okay, just checking.
Any other discussion?
Curious question, just on the language. We have resignations of guidance counselor, and then we hire a school counselor.
Yeah, they should all be called school counselors these days. The certification title has changed. They should all be school
It's the
counselors.
same thing.
It's the same thing.
Thank you.
Catch. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No? All right.
Make a motion that we accept the school year 23-24 extended school year staff.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, passes.
Make a motion that we approve the nominations for the athletic department / coaches as presented.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Make a oh yeah, no, same stuff.
Oh, what's in the back?
Sorry, my bad.
All coaches, done.
Oh, it's all
All
coaches?
coaches.
Yeah, it's all coaches. All right, all done. Okay, next up here is we are at next public input.
Good evening. I'm Mary Winslow from Barnstead. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Mr. Broderick, in March at the school district meeting, I asked you a question regarding the district's inability to provide FAPE for IEP students in the 2022-23 school year, which included 2 of our daughters, and the fact that there was $250,000 plus in special education budget cuts for this upcoming 2023-24 school year. The question was if the district and taxpayers were prepared for the out-of-district placements that were going to be filed as a result of the worsening special education IEP situation within the district. Your recorded answer to me was this: the budget that was passed that very day had already been increased to accommodate for out-of-district placements at both the high school and the elementary school. Since that is the case, Mr. Broderick, my husband and I find ourselves wondering why the district refused to accommodate our out-of-district placement request at our due process mediation meeting this past Thursday. Mr. Zellen, the district attorney, mentioned at the group portion of our mediation that going to a hearing would be potentially very costly for the district. He seemed open to discuss potential agreements with us. Mr. Broderick, you had given full authority to make that decision
Mediation is a confidential process.
to the special ed director.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you right there. First of all, this is under legal, and this is all confidential. It should not be read out here. So this is all under our legal counsel and stuff beyond our scope that's not here for the public setting. So I'm going to stop you there on this.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Request a meeting.
Yes, you can request to be non-public if you want to be on the agenda for next month. You want to do something non-public with this, but as for a public setting, this would not be appropriate.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. So I was listening.
For board members who may not be aware, mediation is a confidential process between school districts and parents who have special education concerns. If that confidential mediation process is not successful, parents or guardians then have the right to file for a due process hearing at the Department of Education. There is no role for the school board in that process.
Okay, but the due process was already filed, and the mediation got scheduled after the filing of the due process, just as a, so is it too late to get on the agenda for the non-public today?
I'm not sure we can even, you can make a request to the chair send to me, and then I will see if it can be something beyond the agenda for something a school board will be able to look at or not, because
Okay.
I will find out.
Fair enough, thank you.
Hello, Joanne Raudio, Alton resident. I am familiar with some of you guys already. I just want to express a concern that I have in terms of the students who will be tuitioned in. Essentially, from my understanding, because I want it to be clear, is that you are accepting these students that are being tuitioned in without looking at their records. You're saying, yes, we will accept them, and without a guarantee that the tuition will be paid by those towns. So I just want to express concern over that, and I think you had expressed a concern in terms of the community. You know, for transparency reasons, I think it should be out there for the community to understand. I may understand it as a resident, but I guarantee that there's a lot of residents out there within the Barnstead and Alton community that will not. And cost is an issue. And considering that we're doing this for cost, I really think that you should really think long and hard about it, but that you also are very transparent with the community. Okay.
I just throw two comments on there. One, there is a criteria for them to come in. They have to meet. We have a criteria to come in. Just because we're asking.
I know that you guys had. I couldn't ask questions.
Yeah, so we're just asking for the records now, but there is criteria they have to meet in order to come
But
here.
I thought it was if there was a wait list.
No,
Is what was
even
said.
to get tuitioned in, you have to meet certain criteria. Like your grades have to be decent. You're not non-disciplined. There's a whole list of things to accept
You
them.
accepted it without having the
But we
records.
accepted that the 9, you still have to go through and get their background and records. Some might still be
Okay,
cut if they have those.
That definitely clarified that
Yeah.
for me. I just didn't want that step to be skipped.
And as
Because
for-
if you're going to these families and saying you're getting accepted, I would have an issue with that. In terms of resources, right?
There's an
Some of these
application
students could be
process.
identified students, right? And they're gonna be using resources.
So there's a application process that they have to go through. That's 1. 2, just so you know, transportation, everything else, none of that, we don't cover any of that stuff. So there's really only costs, they're sitting in a classroom, and our classroom sizes are small. So impact to the district is,
Well, that's what you're assuming right now, until you get the records, right? Because I'm assuming that maybe you're not accepting identified students
That would
then?
still be paid for by the district.
Or-
We wouldn't,
They'd have to pay for
they'd have to pay for that. That's all under the, that's under federal, so that's something different.
So if the school is refusing to pay that, there's a lot of gray areas, there's a lot of questions that are gonna be asked. I'm in education, some of you guys know that I'm an educator. Those questions are gonna be asked, and all I ask for is transparency, that the community members are aware and that they know. That's all. That's something that just popped up. I didn't plan on, mentioning anything about it. I didn't even realize that this would be an issue. So, as a concerned Alton resident, just please consider that.
I would point the public to an FAQ document that we published a few months ago that does respond to the things that we do know. There are some things we don't know about open enrollment, but among the things that we do know.
She expressed the concern too, that the community also, there is going to be a concern within the community.
Among the things that we do know are that special education costs that are unique to a particular child are borne by the school district where the child resides. That's a matter of New Hampshire law, separate from New Hampshire's open enrollment law. So in other districts where students are accepted for tuition at public high schools, students who require speech therapy, occupational therapy, other services, those charges are billed additionally. I think I provided to this joint board a sample price list, essentially.
So would
at a
that be
meeting a
made
few months
available to
ago.
the public so that they would understand? Because
yeah, the
from right
FAQs
now,
are posted
what
online.
I heard as a community member is that we could technically eat the cost, right? It didn't break down special ed, it didn't break down anything, it just said the cost.
Yeah,
Right, so anybody listening,
it's all public.
It's actually published, it's out there, it's on our website.
Yeah, or email me. But we've posted on Facebook, we've put it on our website, you can email me, I can send you
It
links.
talks about the special ed and stuff that's separate law that would be covered by them. So that's nothing that we actually wouldn't even have to really worry about.
So when you talk about eating the cost, there's really no cost to add that child to the classroom. But if the child has a one-on-one para, for example, that district is required.
no,
to
I
pay
understand
for it.
that. I understand the class sizes are small, that it's not, however, when we vote, it's for us to have a benefit, right? It's for us to bring students in.
Absolutely, I
Because
agree
of
with you.
cost. All I'm asking is that that is clear to the community members, that's all. Because if it's confusing for me just sitting here, it's gonna be confusing for other
Sure.
people asking questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other public input? Seeing none, I'll close the public input. We have a bunch of stuff from future agenda items and follow-up. Any other stuff needs to be added? Is there any other business that needs to come before the board?
You're going to have an ESSER use of funds report at your next meeting. You're going to have a shared services report at your next meeting.
We will need to have a buildings and ground meeting, I'm sure, before next meeting.
The curriculum committee gonna be teachers and board members
I'll let you and Matt
We
decide.
we haven't really discussed that.
We had that other curriculum committee that the kids were involved in.
I feel like with all the changes, it might be best to let the dust settle a little bit and let people kind of figure out.
Sure,
You know, and
it's
then-
on the agenda, that's what I'm
Right.
saying, should we even have it on the agenda until we figure it all out?
It could be a placeholder, but I feel like, we certainly don't need to develop a committee while people are still
Sure,
getting their feet wet.
right.
Okay, keep it as a placeholder.
Placeholder.
Placeholder's a good word for it,
I like that.
less work for me.
And business today? No? All right, so we have a couple of non-publics, correct? Tim, you have a non-public? And we have a non-public?
And at this particular RSA?
So,
Yeah.
make a motion to enter non-public under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, A and C, is that correct?
I second.
Roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Yes?
We are now in non-public.
Would I like to go home instead?